Why are you so obsessed with Trump?
I like how he's funny. He's just funny.
How's he funny to you?
The 2015 debate. You're fat, you're stupid. I just loved it. I felt like his personality was my personality.
He's like has a 15-year-old sense of humor.
Exactly. But that is, I love that.
People say, oh, Trump's that's a cult, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like cult is such a negative word. We are not a cult. We are a group of Americans that love our country and want it back.
Are there any old hits or things you hope he goes back to?
Oh gosh, I feel like whatever he spews out of his mouth, I just love it.
How do you feel about Trump's speech last night? I think Daddy did a great job.
Why are you calling him Daddy?
Because when Daddy talks, I listen. When Daddy taxes, I pay. And when Daddy starts a trade war that ruins my businesses, I say, thank you, Daddy. Let me stop you. I'm curious what your takeaway was from the speech last night. Democrats are pedos, tariffs are brilliant, you don't understand them, wokeness is dead, Putin is our papa, and patriotism is gonna be a little painful for a while.
And you're just gonna swallow that?
Yes, we love swallowing what Daddy gives us. Plus, if I'm suffering, it means that liberals are suffering, and that's the only thing I really ever cared about.
No, we're human beings. Help us. Give us what we need. We don't want to be the stepchildren anymore. I am MAGA and a Christian.
There's a funny thing about ignoring warning signs. They don't disappear just because you don't like them. They just turn into consequences with better sound effects. Welcome back to Think Out Loud, friends, the home of caffeine-fueled commentary and the occasional existential sigh. To my amazing subscribers, you already know, I see those comments and I appreciate every single one of you. Seriously, you guys keep me going. And to our new viewers, welcome. This is the place where we make sense of the nonsense, one FAFO at a time. Now, MAGA voters had every chance to avoid what's happening right now. They were told the economy would tank, the tariffs would hurt farmers, and the billionaires weren't their friends. But instead of listening, they decided reality was just too woke. Well, turns out, reality didn't care. So today, we're breaking down how the movement that prided itself on owning the libs ended up getting owned by basic math, empathy, and the laws of economics. Let's get into it. You know what's wild? It's not like nobody warned them. Economists, analysts, small business owners, heck, even some of their own family members said, hey, these policies might not be as great as they sound. But MAGA voters looked at those warnings and said, fake news. Because apparently, basic math became liberal propaganda somewhere along the way.
This isn't a switch that you flip, and suddenly manufacturing is back in the United States of America.
It's also not a switch that you should wish to flip. In the United States, service sector wages are higher than manufacturing wages. We should not wish to move Americans from higher paying jobs into lower paying jobs.
Why aren't more conservatives saying what you just said, that the president is wrong?
The president's trade policy is going to do a lot of economic damage. It's going to reduce the income of households. It's going to reduce the purchasing power of wages. It's going to increase unemployment.
The administration says the opposite of everything you just said there.
They are.
The Commerce Secretary says jobs are going to explode.
Yeah, they're wrong. And they will be proven wrong if they stick with this policy.
You guys remember when last year Kamala Harris warned us that Donald Trump's economic plans would likely crash the stock market and put us in a recession, and that every economist out there thought the same thing? Yeah, looks like she was right about that one.
Start hearing about red states going broke? Yes, states going broke. So this one today, this red state that voted for Donald Trump is Nebraska. Look at this budget deficit. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. You want to know how they're thinking about fixing this budget deficit? Increasing taxes in the state, sales tax, or some kind of other tax. Don't forget, the red state voted for Donald Trump. They're also paying in federal taxes and getting nothing for it. They're also paying tariffs, just like you and me, and getting nothing for it. So Nebraska and other red states, just so you know, the top 10 states struggling financially right now, you can Google this, 9 out of 10 of them are red states. Stay tuned for more red states about to go broke.
They were told that tariffs would hurt American workers, that cutting taxes for billionaires wouldn't magically make the middle class rich. But instead of listening, they were like, nah, it's all part of the plan. Yeah, the plan to make life harder for yourself while billionaires buy their third yacht. And now, here we are. Small businesses closing, grocery prices climbing like they're training for the Olympics, and wages still crawling like they're stuck in 2012. It's almost poetic, in a tragic sitcom kind of way. You see, what MAGA voters really fell for was the illusion of control. Psychologically, it's comforting to think someone strong, someone loud has your back. So when Trump promised to drain the swamp, they didn't stop to ask who was holding the hose. But here's the kicker. When you vote for a billionaire who's bragged about not paying taxes, and then expect him to protect working people, that's not patriotism. That's Stockholm Syndrome with a flag wrapped around it. And I get it, okay? Nobody likes admitting they got played. But at some point, you've got to stop blaming the deep state and start checking your receipts. Because those great again promises, they're now printed on the same paper as your shrinking paycheck. So, as we move forward, just remember, the economy didn't betray MAGA. They betrayed themselves. All right, let's roll the next set of clips. You're going to want to see how deep this denial goes.
How does a 22-year-old become so filled with hate? 5 years earlier, I was told he was a Trump supporter. And we sent our kids off to college and they brainwashed him. I am making a plea to mothers out there. Do not send your children into these indoctrination camps. Don't do it. Do not do it. At one moment, that 22-year-old who shot Charlie was a baby in his mother's arms. And by all accounts, those parents did a good job raising him until he was sent off to be brainwashed. We have lived through the most horrific brainwashing campaign in the history of mankind.
Real reason that conservatives love religion and hate education is because religion teaches you to accept what you're told without questioning it, and education teaches you to question what you're told.
Their actions don't just go by what they say. What do I mean by this? My For You page is full of a bunch of Republicans and MAGA talking about how college isn't worth it because when you go there, you're just going to become woke, radicalized, or extremely liberal. I'm not here to tell you if college is for you or not. That's your own decision. But what I am going to tell you is watch what these Republicans and these people are doing, because Donald Trump's own son goes to NYU, which is one of the most liberal universities in the country. If he really believed any of this at all, Barron would not be going to college, or he'd be going to Liberty University. The fact that his child is not going to Liberty University, NYU, is everything you need to know. Marjorie Taylor Greene's daughter went to college. She played softball. She played 2 years in Arkansas and then transferred to UNC. Do you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she actually believed the nonsense that she spews out of her mouth, would have let her child go to UNC and not like a Liberty University or another Christian university? So stop listening to what they're telling you, because you can just look at Donald Trump himself. Every single one of his kids has a great college education from a university. And you don't have to believe me. You can use Google and Google will show you. There's several Republicans in the House and Senate whose children have gone to universities and they didn't go to a school like Liberty University. If they really believe that college campuses were making your children woke, radicalized, and liberal, they would not be sending their children to these places. They'd be sending them to fucking Liberty University or other Christian universities, and the majority of them are not. So you have to ask yourself, why do they want you not to send your kids there, but they are sending their kids there? Why don't they want you to go there, but yet they went there, or their children are going there? For their children and want their kids to do it, but don't want you and your kids to do it. That's what you have to fucking figure out.
You know, every time I hear MAGA folks say, we don't need college, we need common sense, I just sip my coffee and think, buddy, you might want to read the price tag on that common sense real quick. Because here's the thing. Education isn't just about degrees or fancy words. It's about learning how not to get scammed by politicians selling slogans like they're miracle cures.
Nobody can do it like that. Honestly. Nobody's stronger than me.
Nobody has better toys than I do.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am. Nobody loves the Bible more than I do. Nobody builds walls better than me. Nobody's better to people with disabilities than me. Nobody's fighting for the veterans like I'm fighting for the veterans.
There's nobody that's done so much for equality as I have.
There's nobody more pro-Israel than I am. There's nobody more conservative than me. There is nobody that respects women more than I do. Nobody would be tougher on ISIS than Donald Trump. There's nobody's ever had crowds like Trump has had. There's nobody that understands the horror of nuclear better than me. And nobody even understands it but me. It's called devaluation, the sale of the uranium that nobody knows what it means. I know what it means. Nobody knows more about trade than me. Nobody knows the game better than I do. Nobody's in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me. Nobody knows politicians better than I do. Nobody knows more about taxes than I do. Nobody knows more about debt than I do. Nobody knows the system better than me.
Somewhere along the way, MAGA turned learning into an enemy. Teachers became villains, scientists became liars, and universities became woke indoctrination centers. And when you make ignorance a badge of honor, you can't be shocked when you keep getting played. It's like trying to run a business without knowing how to count and then blaming calculators for being elitist. But here's the deeper issue. Rejecting education gave them a false sense of power. They felt like, we don't need experts. We'll figure it out ourselves. That's comforting, sure. But it's also how you end up cheering for tariffs that tank your own crops and clapping for tax cuts that don't include you. And the irony? The same government that said student loan forgiveness is socialism just turned around and handed billions to other countries. $20 billion to Argentina, to be exact. You know, the same Argentina selling soybeans to China, while American farmers are still waiting for their bailout checks. So let me get this straight. Forgiving a teacher's student loan is socialism, but bailing out a foreign government is good business? Make it make sense. It's moments like these that prove education isn't about politics. It's about protection. Because when you know better, you can't be fooled this easily. Maybe, just maybe, if MAGA stopped hating what they don't understand, they'd finally realize knowledge isn't the enemy. It's the escape route. All right, refill your mug, because the next part, it's about character. And trust me, that's where things really start to fall apart.
We like to yap about religious psychosis, but what about political psychosis? These people believe whatever Donald Trump says. He demonized the left when Kirk passed, and they immediately believed it was the left with zero evidence.
You ever notice how Trump supporters don't actually understand the stuff they cheer for? They just think it's a good idea because he said it. He says ditch the Department of Education and MAGA applause. Suddenly, people who are sniffing glue in 5th grade art class are experts in school reform. MAGA supports him wanting to gut FEMA. You know, the agency that saves the South's ass every hurricane season? Cool. Let's see how Mississippi or Louisiana handle a Cat 5 hurricane on a bake sale budget. And then Trump appoints RFK Jr. Fantastic. Because what this country really needed was a science-denying conspiracy nut with a cabinet pass. Oh, and tariffs, they love them. Not because they know how they actually work, but because Trump said they were tough on China. Except we tried this mass tariff plan before, and it helped pave the road to the Great Depression. So yeah, great plan. Let's run that one back. They're not supporting policy. They're endorsing sabotage. Because Trump doesn't build. He dismantles, he guts, he strips, and he scorches, and then he stands on the ashes and calls it success. And the worst part, MAGA thought this was all a good idea, so they voted for it. And because they voted for it, they have to keep pretending it's a good idea, even as it bankrupts their schools and floods their taxes.
I have followed this president all over. I went to jail for him. I would die for him. I follow him to the ends of the earth.
This is going to be a tough question. I want you to think really hard about it, all right?
Yeah.
I want you to criticize Donald Trump.
I'm not going to criticize. I got nothing bad to say about Donald J. Trump.
Nothing.
That's never going to happen. No, I got nothing. I'm a veteran.
What's your least favorite quality about Donald Trump? Let me ask you that.
My least favorable thing about President Trump, nothing.
Nothing?
Because you know what? I'm hiring him to run the country, and he knows what he's doing. Just so you know, you don't have to defend things that are bad.
I know, and I feel the same way about you. I feel like you sometimes stick up for things when you shouldn't.
I'm not going to sit here and second guess him or armchair quarterback him. He does a great job, and I'll vote for him again this year.
I'm going to flip what you said back at you. You don't have to defend things. You don't have to defend everything.
No.
Can you at least admit he has a little bit of an ego problem?
No. Tell you what, if you think it's an ego problem, that's your opinion, and I respect that.
This is the opinion of everyone that's ever met him, everyone that's ever been in his cabinet or written a book about him.
No. Not everyone thinks that.
You know, sometimes character doesn't need a background check. It just needs a microphone. And trust me, we heard enough over those years to know exactly what kind of man we were dealing with. I mean, there were red flags the size of Texas flapping in the wind. We had grab them by the I alone can fix it. And somehow, the takeaway for a lot of MAGA folks was, wow, finally, a straight shooter. No, that's not honesty. That's emotional manipulation with a tan. See, here's the thing. When you start mistaking arrogance for strength and cruelty for leadership, you create a culture that worships power and punishes truth. And that's exactly what happened. Trump didn't just tell people what they wanted to hear. He told them who to blame. It was the immigrants, the media, the scientists, the teachers, basically anyone who wasn't wearing a red hat. Psychologically, that's what makes movements like this dangerous. They operate on projection, pointing the finger outward so you never have to look inward. And when people lose that moral mirror, they'll excuse anything, as long as it fits the team narrative. And you can see it now. So many of the same folks who once screamed, "Lock her up," are suddenly real quiet while watching their own side face indictments, investigations, and, well, mugshots turned into merch. Imagine being so deep in denial you start selling t-shirts of your own downfall. That's not patriotism. That's brand loyalty with Stockholm Syndrome. But here's the real tragedy. Character isn't something you vote for. It's something you model. And when millions of people spent years defending the indefensible, it didn't just cost them credibility. It cost them their moral compass. And now, as the consequences roll in, the lessons becoming clearer. When you trade truth for loyalty, you might win the argument, but you'll lose the country. All right, go ahead and top off that coffee, because the next part is where the regret starts setting in. And trust me, it's a strong brew.
If you could say anything to President Trump now, what would you say?
I expected better from you. I really did. I expected that you would do what was right and cut waste and fraud and all of those things that you promised us before we elected you in office, but you're not doing that. You're creating a disaster, and I don't know what America's going to look like if this continues.
Did you ever think that your job would be impacted in a Trump administration?
No, absolutely not.
Jennifer Piggott was abruptly fired from her job at the Treasury Department's Bureau of Fiscal Service here in Parkersburg, West Virginia, along with 124 other probationary employees. She'd voted for Donald Trump and thought her government job would be safe.
But to cut the knees out of the working class Americans just doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's what's the checking account look like, babe? We went through our list of items on our budget and said, what can we get rid of? And we've gotten rid of all of those things, including cable. I had my last review on the 31st of January, and I had the highest rating that you can get on a review, less than 21 days before I was terminated for my performance.
On top of losing her job, Jennifer is facing backlash from both Democrats and Republicans for speaking out.
I will vote for Donald Trump, even though he keep deporting y'all. I will vote for Donald Trump. He been snatching all y'all kids from y'all. I will vote for Donald Trump. He got white people kidnapping y'all.
Well, some Venezuelans say they feel betrayed by the Trump administration, and they want to make it clear the majority of Venezuelans are not criminals.
And good
people. I'm paying my taxes. I follow the rules.
Alvaro Duran is a TPS recipient. He's in the process of obtaining a green card because he's married to a U.S. citizen. However, his mother and siblings are now in limbo.
Go back to Venezuela is not an option.
Not an option for hundreds of thousands of people who say they may face jail time or retaliation for speaking out against the Maduro regime that remains in power. In a TPS termination notice, DHS said in Venezuela there are notable improvements in several areas such as the economy, public health, and crime that allow for these nationals to be safely returned to their home country.
Conditions have not changed, actually have getting worse.
At a press conference in Doral Monday, Venezuelan Americans denounced the Trump administration and South Florida Republicans.
More than betrayed, beyond betrayed. They used us. They actually, during the campaign, and I don't want to make this political, but during the campaign, the elected officials from the Republican Party, they actually told us that he was not going to touch the
I was a Trump supporter. I don't know how long I can keep doing this. I have a construction company, and not a fucking thing is getting done. This is what I get. This is what I fucking get. Nothing but white boys. It takes 4 days to do a one-day job. I might have fucked up.
You know, it's one thing to ignore the red flags, but it's another to act surprised when the parade ends in flames. Because now, the consequences are everywhere. The same folks who said the economy was the strongest it's ever been are watching their rent skyrocket, their groceries shrink, and their savings disappear faster than a MAGA fact check. You've got small-town businesses closing because the tariffs crushed their supply chains, farmers losing land they've owned for generations, and young MAGA voters realizing that owning the libs doesn't exactly pay the bills. It's almost poetic. They called it freedom when corporations ran wild, patriotism when billionaires dodged taxes, and God's plan when wages stayed the same. Now, they're learning that you can't pray inflation away. And the irony is, they were warned. Economists told them, historians told them, even their grandmothers probably told them, baby, if someone's selling you dreams and they're rich enough to buy the moon, you might be the product. But instead of taking the warning, they doubled down, called it fake news, and now they're watching the FAFO bill come due. And this isn't just about MAGA voters. It's about how easy it is to mistake anger for leadership and emotion for evidence. When you stop thinking critically, you start voting emotionally. And that's how people end up cheering for policies that slowly pull the rug out from under them. The truth is, a lot of Americans are hurting right now. But the pain hits different when you realize it's self-inflicted. That you helped build the fire you're standing in. And look, it's not about being perfect or political. It's about learning. Because if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that ignorance is expensive and denial has interest rates. So maybe, just maybe, the next time someone promises greatness without accountability, they'll remember this moment and think twice before signing up for the sequel. All right. Let's bring this home.
I learned something years ago that dramatically changed how I understood my reactions to the world. But it wasn't until I applied it to politics, which I do to everything because everything is politics, that my mind was truly and deeply broken wide open. Now, what I learned is how the brain is wired. The data that we get from our senses, we see, hear, feel, taste, and smell, that data is wired directly to the fight or flight part of our brain. And it has to pass through that part of our brain to get to where we can actually process it rationally. This is for a very specific evolution evolutionary reason. Because when you see or hear something that might actually be a threat, your decision to either run or fight could be a matter of life or death. This is why when you're thinking about a spider and then something brushes against your leg, you launch yourself across the room before you realize, oh, it was just my pants. Just like with the example with the spider, sometimes our senses betray us, and it's how we manage that betrayal that determines if you're a Republican or Democrat. It's right there in the word conservative. The default position of a conservative is to resist change. New food, new culture, new people, new religions, new skin color. And it's our senses that detect change. You hear a lisp or a foreign language, or what you think is a man's voice coming out of a woman's body. Your senses are capturing that information and sending it to your primitive brain first. And especially if your amygdala is larger than average, congratulations, Republican men, yours is bigger. Based on the neural pathways you've activated the most, your brain chooses before you have a chance to even consider it if what you are experiencing is a threat. Now, millions of us do go through that same process, but those of us who know how to ignore that emotional, irrational reaction, we do so either because of education or experience, because we've seen time and time again when we leave our hometown and we leave our high school friends behind, even for a little bit. Fear of change is normal, and once the rational brain catches up, the fear dissolves. But tens of millions of Republicans don't have that education or experience running interference on their behalf. Making it far worse, right-wing leaders and right-wing news outlets push on this fear because they know that when they keep you in that place of fear, you are far easier to control. Brain basically shuts down to new information. In other words, Republican leaders are manipulating a good faith biological mechanism in your brain to keep you afraid, because when they keep you afraid, they keep you dumb. The longer you stay dumb, the easier you are to manipulate. And even worse, the longer you stay on that hamster wheel, the harder it is for you to ever find your way out of the cage. But it's still possible if you take the time to recognize when you are being manipulated. I promise you that is time well worth taking, because a life spent reactive and afraid is not a life worth living.
That right there was such an amazing summary from @OhThat'sRich, a perfect breakdown of political manipulation at its finest. Honestly, if manipulation were an Olympic sport, half these politicians would be bringing home gold medals and endorsement deals. And the craziest part? They don't even have to lie well anymore. They just have to say it loud enough, repeat it often enough, and make sure it comes with a flag emoji and a Bible verse. Boom. Instant credibility. But that's the game, right? Keep people angry, keep them scared, and they'll stop asking questions. That's how you build a following that mistakes emotional manipulation for leadership. It's not politics anymore. It's theater. And most folks don't even realize they bought front row seats. So shout out to creators like @OhThat'sRich who still call it like it is, because we need that honesty now more than ever. And to all of you watching, if you've made it this far, thank you for hanging out with me today. You know I read every single comment, and even when I can't reply to all of them, just know I appreciate every word. Now, I'm off to refill my coffee and try to figure out how many politicians it takes to change a light bulb, because clearly they've been sitting in the dark for a while. I'm Glenn, and this has been another Think Out Loud breakdown. Stay smart, stay kind, and remember, manipulation only works on the uninformed. So keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you all in the next one.